I'm joined now by Simon Lester, a trade policy analyst. He works with the libertarian CATO Institute's Herbert Stiefel Center for Trade Policy Studies. We're getting word that President Trump going to make it official with a ceremony tomorrow, but as you saw, there seems to be some waffling today. You wrote this and talked about how the president had talked about draining the swamp, and you say that these tariffs, the exact opposite. You write, Trump is going directly to special interests and giving them favors at the expense of the rest of the country. I think Dan's story kind of illustrating that, but elaborate further, if you will.
Well, President Trump had a meeting last week with aluminum and steel company executives and gave them basically a subsidy, some welfare, saying, I'm going to take this action to favor you at the expense of everybody else. And there's no doubt that the steel and aluminum industry will benefit from this. It's just, what about the cost to everybody else? Doesn't that outweigh it? Shouldn't we take that into account? And as you noted in the intro, some economists have tried to measure this, and their calculation is this is going to cost more jobs than it gains. You might get a little more employment in the steel and aluminum industry, but there's all these other sectors that use steel and aluminum. It's going to raise their costs. It's going to put their workers out of a job.
And Dan Williams' piece pointing out 200,000 people lost their jobs when George Bush tried tariffs. They were only in place for a year before he reversed things. We don't see Donald Trump as the type of guy that reverses things. How long do you think these will be in place? I mean, is he the type that would do a course correction once he realizes that people are losing jobs?
He's hard to predict. You can imagine that if he actually saw job losses or stock market losses, or as the effects of this play out, he would rethink it. It would be nice in a sense to maybe get a test case of protectionism. We keep arguing, we keep saying there are these historical incidences where it didn't go well. Maybe we just need to refresh our memories, but it would be nice if we could just look back on history and learn the lesson and not repeat it.
The Speaker of the House talking about surgical tariffs. We're talking about, I'm hearing UK leaders saying that there needs to be a coordinated global approach to this issue. You're hearing a lot of different ideas. What is the answer?
Well, I do think that, we're talking about steel and aluminum tariffs applied to everybody. That seems a little overbroad and rash. Many people agree, however, that there are some problematic practices going on in China with their steel overproduction. So it seems like if the United States and the European Union and Canada and Japan could coordinate an effort to put pressure on China to rein in some of its overcapacity, that would be a better use of all of our resources. And I know there's been a lot of talk about it. It's not clear to me that they've really pushed as hard as they can, and President Trump here is maybe abandoning that effort and going to a unilateral effort that's so vastly overbroad and bringing in our national security partners and not really having much of an impact on China. So I think he's taking the wrong approach here.
Let me ask you one final question before we go. Bourbon, Harley-Davidsons, sorghum. I mean, how far out does this ripple? I mean, it's sort of like an octopus, isn't it? Arms going in all different directions. It
is a long list of products that the EU has come up with, and some of them, the ones you mentioned, are specifically designed to target districts where important congressional leaders are. It's a very surgical process of figuring out how to inflict the most pain. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be very widespread. They actually have thrown in the kitchen sink to all of this. There are sinks are included on their list. So it's really a long list, and a lot of U.S. producers are going to feel the impact. If we do get into this escalating tariff war, and Europeans, the EU imposes tariffs on U.S. producers, it's not just going to be the U.S. consumers, it's going to be U.S. producers spread all around the country who feel the negative impact.
I said that was the last question, but one more. What do you expect tomorrow in terms of the announcement? Because as we said today, you kind of see a narrowing of the focus of this.
Well, the big questions tomorrow are, when does this go into effect? I mean, he'll sign it tomorrow, but it might not go into effect right away. And then which countries are excluded? Because that's going to tell us the scope of this war. If you're going to include Canada, Mexico, and the EU in this, it's really kind of an attack on the trading system. If you're going to narrow it and keep it focused on China, it's sort of a different animal. So we're going to learn that tomorrow. They may still be trying to figure it out tonight.
All right, Simon Lester, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.